Sometimes I get this little feeling and I'm like, oh, you're in trouble now. Because this is combative. I have a very distant relative who was knighted. I'm fairly sure from the research I've done. And this individual was knighted and has a effigy in a church with a full knight with a sword and gauntlet and all the things of knighthood, but was a politician. The current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has been knighted, is Sir Keir Starmer. And we can see how this, for quite a long time, this is like 400 years ago, this particular individual. So we've been in this for a while. We've been in this evolution of combat taking place by speaking and not by sword. My manifestation of this is my sword is my phone, because I'm not even in the arena, because I've been pushed out of the arena, literally into prison, by trying to make my point with the most disconnected form of violence that has ever existed in the world, and that is being propped up by the current politicians. So you can see what's happening. Now, the thing that just led me to this realization is I'm quitting nicotine because that has been imposed by our politicians. First, it got taxed to an extraordinary thing, which only was to the detriment of the poor. And we continuously keep finding substances and things to implant as the enemy. And nicotine and tobacco is no different. And what happened, look, I've quit nicotine a few times. It's uncomfortable. It's not that uncomfortable, but it feels this strange discomfort. And a lot of people experiencing this are at the lowest rung. So they're already the most uncomfortable of our society. They're either homeless or disabled or mentally disabled, all these things. And then on top of that, they're experiencing nicotine withdrawal, which is quite uncomfortable. It's up there with like heroin withdrawal, but it's being positioned as that this is with shame on them, despite the inconvenient truth that the majority of the individuals that actually set up the structure that these current politicians are squatting in my opinion, use nicotine all the time, and it was a non-issue because it's not a difficult thing to grow. It's a self-imposed system of torture, basically, because you're not allowed to grow it. It's fucking expensive. If you do slip into it, you are addicted, and then you are kind of permanently on hock to maintain your addiction, or you go through the uncomfortable thing of withdrawing. And so what I did, I've run out of money, okay? Purposefully, I could probably go get money from the government, but that seems like, it seems like not true to my quest to go and then get money from the government. I would rather just show the absurdity by not doing that and still being able to live. And then showing that the government is in fact trying to steal from me and is trying to then in turn steal from you, and using tools of just insanity. And this all came from me realizing I went outside to get a bit of sun, to get a bit of vitamin D. This is still free. They haven't managed to be able to tax that yet, although they're trying. Bill Gates literally trying to gatekeep the fucking sky by cloud seeding and things like that. And I found when I did have cigarettes, because cigarettes sometimes were a bit too much, so I'd thrown a cigarette away that still had half the cigarette there, and I smoked it. And this brought me back to jail, because this was a phenomenon that I noticed in jail. I didn't smoke in jail. I quit. I was like, I'm not going to add to it by I'm just going to be not smoking. And nicotine and cigarettes are quite a commodity in jail. And so what I experienced in there was usually Indigenous, Aboriginals trying to, and this has been consistent, not even in jail, trying to get the dag ends of cigarettes. And this is like this constant thing that's going on. Because even in jail, there's like, that's it, that's all there is left. And I just think this is so shocking to the senses to understand that this is going on, because this is imposed. And this is always, for not always, but for a very long time, as soon as we discovered that this was there, this has been the tool that we've used. And I've lost where I was going to go. Isn't that fucking upsetting? I've lost it. Oh, it's had so much vigor and I've lost it. And that's upsetting. That's probably the nicotine, in a way. But yeah, so what I was going to say is I've got, how many days left? It's the 13th. I've got 7 days left of imprisonment because I'm still in prison. I was put in prison for supposedly breaching a violence restraining order that was imposed by using false information that basically claimed that unless I am pursuing frivolous luxury, I'm mentally ill. Because there is no such thing as security within this system. It does not run on security or anything. It runs on frivolous luxury. And now we are imposing frivolous luxury into law. And this is shown by I am outcast from my family because I am not pursuing there we go. And I found it, frivolous luxury. What I am doing is pursuing knowledge. And I'm pursuing solutions for what I see and many others see as a destructive path that we are heading down as an entire culture. Because the plain truth is, what I'm doing right now, if I had a couple of letters at the end of my name, I could be getting paid an astonishing amount to go and teach very well-off students this at a factor of 1 to, say, 30 or 60. I don't know how big lectures are, and a lot of times now they're not even going to lectures, they're doing them online. So this shows it again, the abstraction. I've spent 16 years sacrificing that now almost completely pervasive urge for frivolous luxury, to educate myself to the actual situation and to secure myself also foundationally in historic knowledge so that I can kind of bridge this gap and find the connecting path to not just being criticism all the time, but to find out why we are here and how we got here and how we can best make slight adjustments to not end up in catastrophic situations. Yet that structure now that is just in plain sight protecting this urge to frivolous luxury because that's all that's left. It's all that's left to protect. And everything, all systems of finance and education and commerce have all stepped hand in hand into that reality, and are now actively defending it. Yet it's our largest threat. And so then, like, basically we have to start finding new explanations for what violence is, because if that's not violence, I don't know what is. If I convinced a group of people to come with me out into the desert and I was unprepared and all those people died, I would be executed. I would be found negligent. I would be labeled all as the worst things on earth. But this is the underlying system that is imposing itself into my sovereign right to raise my family into the actual situation that I have spent the time and educated myself to be aware of. And I haven't neglected that responsibility by continuing on a fantasy or a delusion that none of these problems are relevant. And it becomes an issue when the very system it's already done it. It's already done it. There is a clear chain of events. And this isn't anything against my children's mother. But the fact that she wasn't even an Australian citizen when we separated, and then this was continuous. So she became an Australian citizen and then initiated this onto me. And that, we can't have that. We can't do that as a society, because it's the fact that I have this historic connection to this land for almost 200 years through my family, that I carry that burden of perhaps stuff that we got wrong. And so I've then, with that responsibility, deferred what I've considered as just the status quo of seeking frivolous luxury, and educated myself to the actual situation. And then that has been used as a vector of attack, as though it is irresponsible of me, when it is the highest level of responsibility that I could find. And it's the differentiation of my peers down that avenue, which only comes because I was a father at 20. And so you can see, like, this entire gender thing, this misogynistic, it's like, let's really get down to it. Are we a misogynistic culture, or are we a culture that just put a father from 20 that sacrificed luxury to actually find out what's going wrong and offer up solutions and try and distribute free education? Did you just put him in jail? Did you just try and get him committed as a society? And what does that say about a society that's doing that? And what institutions do we go to get grounding historically to actually map out where we are? And this is, like, I have had no choice but to present my argument to the royal family, because the royal family is the maintaining structure of the system that is the reason I'm here. We came here to assist in that colony under that flag, under that institution of the crown. And then if we go back to what is the royal family protecting? They're protecting the Church of England, they're protecting the United Kingdom, the British Empire, if you will, and the Protestant religion, which is Christianity. And then we get to the historic conflict between them and the Catholics, and it's like, really, they were just in the same position. And that's why, like, the Vatican, it just becomes like, well, don't we all have a collective thing in common? Don't we all have a collective responsibility to accurately map out what's actually happening in the world rather than be swept up in this luxury that has been historically the death of empires, the death of civilization has manifest down this road to luxury, down this road of disconnectedness from the whole and the very teachings of the person that we're holding up, that is the base of our constitution. That was his message. And so it's like, where are we at? Because I didn't see a memo that said that we are now, the Australian Commonwealth is now a Satanistic cult that is destroying itself. And the thing is, like, the fact is that, because I can argue all the things that you will argue against me. Just the fact that I don't have paperwork that says I'm adequately educated to make these things. There is no recognized course in this because it's new. And a lot of the problems we're having are from the over extension of authority based on historic chains of knowledge and education that we're now kind of finding out maybe wrong, maybe critically wrong, maybe unrepairably wrong, may actually be making everything worse. And I just really want to know. I want to know where does this argument come down? I spent 9 months with a person that was paid by the government to try and counsel me, but all that was just it's just literally just like re-educate. They're just like, no, you're wrong, but with no backing, no actual fortitude to make that argument. Just like a crazy person yelling at a fucking wall. Just like, no, you're wrong. There was nothing else there. There was nothing behind it. Well, how am I wrong? And I would just map that out again and again and again. No, maybe you're wrong. Maybe you're wrong. And I'm just like, no, I'm not. I'm not wrong. Because I know, because my reality is so grounded in the entire story. I can tell you the entire story of what I'm doing. I can show you the actual effects of what I'm talking about. I can show you in school it used to be like, can you show you working out? I can show my working out because it's all there. And when it boiled down to it, the argument that was getting constantly for 9 months, so this dispossessed me of my freedoms for 9 months. The only argument was like, basically, you're a man and you're wrong. And I'm like, no, and this is the ABC listing this criticism of this breakdancing travesty as misogynistic. And I just can't, it's not adding up anymore. It's not, you want to claim misogyny while there's Aboriginal men in jail for more than likely breaches of a law that they actually do not possess currently. They have not developed enough to actually even understand the laws that they're supposedly breaking, let alone defend themselves against it. And then they're in a jail that is basically an automated system of distraction where their only blip of joy in the world is attaining the dag end of a cigarette that basically is worthless. And it's only of value because it is being kept from them. And I think this is kind of like, this is what I'm doing. Like right now, I'm doing hours and 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 hours of content, of educational content that's actually the most relative thing to what's going on in the world. But it has been considered worthless because it isn't coming from the protected structures of knowledge. Yet to like someone who is perhaps confronting the real truths of what's challenging our societies right now, like I found versions of this, it's invaluable because it's like, oh, and it's hidden by its perceived worthlessness, like the cigarette butt on the floor. And this, like, I'd walked past that cigarette butt on the floor, hadn't known it because I'd had the chewies and I had the vape, I had these things, and then it was like, nicotine's gone. I've had 2.5 days of this, and then it jumps out. It's like, there it is. And so we can see that this entire value economy is wrong, is flawed. And I really do think it was caused by the removal of the gold standard, because that sent all our value into the clouds. And then we manifest that by putting all of our knowledge into the clouds, including this into the clouds. I really think the only way you can get to a point where you tax tobacco, a plant that grows basically like a weed and has been smoked for free by everyone, that you didn't pay for tobacco. It wasn't like it was a commodity. You paid for the processing of it. So the drying and the curing and the higher quality that was, and the convenience of rolling into, like, that's a whole lot of work if you go and do it. But it's not expensive work. And then so you can see that the value proposition of this addictive substance, nicotine or tobacco, became in the limiting of it. And this is the same effect that we've seen with diamonds, because it's economics on a non-gold backed reality. And this is the same as, like, right now, I'm basically being robbed by a bunch of people living in a debt-based fantasy land, and I'm kind of sitting there going, well, no, this is my father's estate. This is his life's work to get to this point, and it's being stolen from me, and you're all trying supposedly to gain this through debt, but you're feeding on an example, a flukish example that happens to have obtained it in a different way. And it all falls down there. It really does. It falls there, or it should. And if it doesn't, that's war. And I think this is where we've been in a war since that gold standard went. And it was a war. It was a continuation of the war between the separatist United States and the British Empire. And the way they did it was they destroyed reality by removing connection to an actual scarce commodity, either being acquired empire, acquired land, acquired social capital by maintaining an army and a monarchy and a people. This is best seen in, like, the King of England, King Charles. He's the King of England, and then he's also the King of the Scots. The King of the Scots is a king over the people that identify as Scottish, not of land, of the people. And this cannot be obtained. Bill Gates, and no, it doesn't matter how much money he makes, he's not going to get to a role like that, because it is historic. Like, it is symbolic value. And this is the attack. they've kind of gone, right, that symbolic value, it has no value. It's priceless. It's into like, it's way past like, say, the Mona Lisa is priceless. Like this status is priceless. And then you can kind of see it's like, well, they've almost gone, well, if that's priceless and it was non-material, it's like, maybe we can do that by just removing gold and going into a fantasy. And all I think it's done is we now have faceless entities committing atrocities on the globe, protected by the fact that there's nothing there. And I think we're at the end of it. If you work for these companies, if you work for these pharmaceutical companies or the government lights that supported them, you've just raised arms against the human race under something that doesn't even exist, that doesn't have an entity. There is no symbology. There's no like collective responsibility bestowed on them by some ceremony that really shows the importance. If you're making pharmaceuticals for the world, you really think that person should be held up, not able to just hide and hide behind paperwork and bureaucracy and red tape and hearsay and legal protection, all these things like that. We want a person, and this symbols of this, like when one of the queens of Scotland died, there was a call to see her. Like there was like, we need to see her. We do not believe she's dead. Or he, I can't remember who it was, because the importance of that role was so integral to the actual operation of the structure that was the way it worked. And this is like going into this period of perhaps AI. Not only are we just going to have entities that can float around committing whatever acts of war they want in the name of profit, and the profit isn't even real. But now we can have like, when's next is McDonald's going to re-emerge Ronald McDonald in AI and make him the leader of McDonald's and make them be able to do whatever they want away from a person? And I think, no, I think this is where it's like, the critics of the monarchy need to understand that monarchy, say everything went to shit tomorrow, that's the only thing that's standing in this region. And that would be the identifying, differentiating factor that would probably, if in Australia, if we went back to those roots, which I assume we would differentiate us from the United States. And I think Canada would fall in line as well, because I think that empire still remains. Because the only thing that made us think that it didn't was the removal of the gold standard, gold being the physical manifestation of like liquid value and currency, and empire being the human manifestation of that. And I honestly think it came down to it. Some people were looking at spreadsheets of maybe the value of how much money they have, how much land, all these things. But it's like, it's not just the land. It never has been. It's the power of the people's going back to that structure, and I think that's where we are. And I don't think it's not just a thing because like it's not actually just a self-serving argument because I happen to come from a closer connection to that structure. I think the very fact that I'm emerging as this person saying this is because of that responsibility that obviously has no value monetarily, so cannot compete with especially fantastic debt-based fucking entities of nothingness. And this is where we get to, it's like those universities have all become just value-based. There is no value based on accurate knowledge. It's just the historic kind of brand equity of these institutions that are destroying that daily. What happened at Harvard is astonishing. What's happening at all those universities is astonishing, because they have gone off the gold standard, and their gold was never gold. Their gold was accurate knowledge that's actually going to improve humanity. And to bring this weird, like, yes, we have a difficult thing in Australia because we have the Aboriginal argument. I am constantly observing multiple figures who I believe are leaders of their people, of Aboriginal people. But I understand so the same effect I'm having where I'm in dispute with my own system, in conflict with its actual legitimacy, they're way back because they're not even coming from the stamp. So it's, if I'm there, this shows how dispossessed Aboriginals really are. And this is where I'm saying this is what the cigarette butt effect is. That if to those individuals incarcerated, that is their highest value thing they're getting is the dag end of a cigarette, that someone happens to get an allowance so they can afford cigarettes. And it's like, you're not just trapping them in literal jails. You're entrapping them in a system that is so devoid of sense. It doesn't make sense at all. And I think I can at least rationalize. I can pinpoint back, and I've got this historic thing, so I can kind of go, look, we hit abstraction based on something put us into the clouds, and we're not making sensible arguments. It doesn't matter if fucking nicotine or tobacco kills people. It's a fucking plant that's free and it grows in the ground. It should not be valued at higher value than gold, because it's a false economy. And that will create problems far larger than just the health problems associated with smoking. And then vaping is the equivalent to that again. We should have had, in a healthy, actually functioning economy that was maybe grounded in reality, like grounded in gold, the way that vaping technology would have emerged is there would have been a device. Like people used to, my dad had like 6 pipes. Pipes were like a thing that you would buy, and you could buy better quality ones and nice artistic. So that would have existed. There would have been a push to develop that. And then there would have been a push for independent producers to produce the highest quality juices that would have, at some cases, been almost harmless. But it didn't go there. It went completely black market. It went completely high strength. It went completely targeted at kids and all these things, and now your solution is to remove it, which will never, ever happen. And it's because we have no structure. We talked about this phenomenon in gold and finances and how it's affecting our economy and how it's affecting inflation. Inflation is directly tied to that. Our inflation is so much higher than anything that anyone is claiming. And that's just the financial. If you get down to the abstract inflation, the cultural inflation, and that's the value of these companies. That's the value of someone like Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a phenomenon that is only accessible in a non-gold standard world. And I'm waiting to see how this can possibly be done, because it's like this, I know I sit here and this is of value because this is accurate information, yet it is worthless. Completely worthless in our economy, because the value proposition of how do you add value to an economy of fantasy is you have to participate and protect the fantasy. If you compete with the fantasy, or if you try and break that bubble of fantasy, you then become a criminal. And that is the point. That is the point that everyone should retract. They should recoil in terror. And they're not. And I think we need, like I spoke earlier, I said about license. We need license and we need liability. King Charles, if he fucks over the people of the United Kingdom, they will kill him. That is what he wakes up to every day. That historically has happened over and over and over and over and over and over again. There is no doubt in his mind. There would be no doubt in his mind that he is permanently linked to that. If he strays away, that will happen. Doesn't matter what laws or politics. If there was a moment of that would happen. The fact that it hasn't happened shows that he's maintaining that. He's actually doing that. He is a far different thing than any politician. And I think the politicians that are emergent, that have emerged in this far off distant colony that is still basically in its infant years, disconnected from any type of responsibility like that, are so delusional in a place that they so don't understand. So they are not protecting anything to do with Australia. They are protecting the mass delusion of Australia, the mass abstraction of Australia. That is quite literally killing the country. And I think that's no different than if you look at Charles Manson. That's a cult leader. That's what that is. And it's not, there's no ties to Christianity. Despite that being the founding book document that our Constitution is based on, there is nothing. We are that government known as the Commonwealth of Australia is a floating, hysterical fantasy, completely severed from anything going on in the geographical region. Propped up by the conflict between its historic roots to the monarchy and to the British Empire and its forcible compliance to the fantasy imposed by the United States of America when they removed the gold standard from our financial systems. I'm going to end there. That's 40 minutes. 40 minutes of probably the most poignant, accurate depiction of where we are at this current moment that I've ever heard, coming from 20 years of absolute obsession into the phenomenon going on, thrust from high definition to HD down to 320p so I can upload it on my mum's Wi-Fi and stick it in a place where no one may ever see it. Yeah, I think we've got a couple of problems. I don't think it is actually, I think that's almost the way it's like, that's the way it's been listed. That's the way I've been participating in it. It's the way a lot of people, we've got a couple of problems in the world. It's like, no, the world has become a problem. It's become an abstraction, and it's now just becoming too absurd for us to stomach anymore. And I wind this out to 40 minutes. And I think what's actually going to happen, I think our sensory systems are so much stronger than we understand. I think we are going to, over the next, and this could be year or this could be month, I'm not really sure, but a small period, not a decade or anything like that. It's a very small period. We are going to be so radically, because of the ability now to broadcast and all events that are happening, I think we are going to be conflicted with multiple examples of world leaders protecting this fantasy and being exposed in real time by just absolute exposure by the universe or God, or just by the environment, or by our human collective psyche, or waking up from this fantasy dream so vividly. And I think watching these individuals be completely unaware that this is going on, because they are so captured by that fantasy. And I think that is going to collectively break this on a global basis over and over and over again, until it is just it just collapses in a pile of its own making. And that's why I will defend the monarchy, because the monarchy, in my opinion, and research and everything, is the only thing that will prevent this region, once part of the British Empire, from collapsing into utter chaos.